About 18 years ago, before I'd actually moved to the United States of America, I was working for an organization called Gateways. Gateways is an organization that was involved in Jewish outreach, and in particular, reaching out to Jewish communities around the tri-state area of New York, to people who had very little Jewish knowledge, very little Jewish background. And somehow or other, they managed to get 400 together for a weekend to be lectured at and taught by rabbis like myself. The weekend, I think, went well. And then I was given the biggie. The biggie was the going away lecture, the final lecture, which, as it were, would carry the momentum of what we'd achieved, hopefully together, over the course of 2 days. My new boss was sitting at the back, obviously assessing whether he'd invested in a worthwhile product. I was a little bit nervous, and I decided, because it's in my nature, to be a little bit naughty halfway through my presentation. And I asked the audience the following question. Tell me, I said, what one quality do you believe that the Jewish people possess that makes us better than anybody else? Now, I'm going to pause. This was tongue-in-cheek, but I looked as though it was very serious. The question obviously wasn't real because I honestly have never met any Jewish person who actually thinks that we're better than anybody else. However, that was the question that I threw at the audience, and now just picture this in your mind. These are Jewish Americans who have got no real Jewish background, and somebody has just asked them, what one quality do you think the Jews possess that make us better than anybody else? What do you think the reaction of the audience was? Well, you don't need a PhD. This is not rocket science. They were appalled. Somebody shouted from the audience, oh, we don't think we are better than anybody else, which, as I said, I agree with. Somebody else said, I think that's racist. Somebody else said, Mark, we're out of here. And a mother started to schlep her 30-year-old son out. And I said, please, I do apologize. Please forgive me. I'm Scottish. And everybody said, oh, that's okay. And they all calmed down because apparently it's perfectly okay to be offensive and racist as long as you're not American. And I continued with my talk. When I came to the next 10 minutes of my talk, I paused and I said, let me ask you a question. Imagine that somebody could give a green card, somebody could allow somebody from a third world country, somewhere in sub-Saharan Africa, the Far East, from a really, really poor, impoverished background, the opportunity to move to another country in the world. Which country do you think that they would choose to move to? And every single hand went up. And everybody said, America. And I smiled and I said, that's very interesting. Tell me, sir, pointing at somebody, why do you think they'd want to move to America? And the guy said, because of our can-do attitude. I said, fine. Why do you think, pointing to somebody else? She said, because of our education system. I didn't say anything on that one. And somebody else said, because of our economy. Well, okay, fair enough. And after I took another few contributions, I said, allow me to just pause there and ask you a question. Do you remember 10 minutes ago when I upset you so much by asking you what makes Jews better than anybody else? You were profoundly offended. And now I ask you what makes you better as Americans than anybody else? And every single person has an answer. Why are you so proud to be Americans and so embarrassed to being Jews? Take the same question and ask it to people in the country I come from, Scots. Do you think you're better than anybody else? Of course, Scots think that we're better than anybody else. After all, who was it that discovered and invented antibiotics? Fleming, a Scottish doctor. Who created the road surfaces that you drive your cars on to come to the theatre here tonight? Tar McAdam, a Scotsman. Alexander Carnegie, who built Manhattan, the titan of the American steel industry, a Scotsman. Who invented the bicycle? A Scotsman. Who invented the telephone? A Scotsman. As you can get the point, Scots can go on a very long time explaining why Scots are better than anybody else. In fact, growing up in Scotland as a young boy, there's a phrase we use. I'm not sure if you would like to hear it in Scottish or in English. I'll do it in Scottish. It goes like this. Was like us. Gai few. And there are deed. Which in translation is, who's like us? Very few. And they're dead. Or if you ask the exact same question of a Frenchman, are you better than anybody else? Bien sûr, mais naturellement. I used to live in France. I used to live in Paris. This is a fact. You can check this one out. Google it. Did you know that in French law, it is forbidden to have more, I think if I remember correctly, it's forbidden to have more than 3 words, it may be 2 words, in a pop song in English. We don't want the dirty English corrupting our beautiful French language. That's legal. And they have schools all over France called Alliance Française, where you can come and study French for free. Because to be able to speak French, that simply elevates you to be truly the chosen people, the French. And indeed, I think it would be fair to say that the French can honestly lay claim to have made huge, enormous contributions to the world's great breakthroughs in music, think of Debussy, in art, in philosophy, in, can I say military defeats? No, military triumphs. The French can certainly lay claim to that, and do lay claim to that. Or ask the exact same question, what makes you better than anybody else, to a German? And don't forget, not too long ago, the German national anthem was Deutschland über alles, Germany above everything. Ask the same question to a Russian, to an Italian, to a Thai, to a Japanese. Everybody thinks that really they're just a bit better than everybody else. Now, I know you're going to say to me, if you really ask a Scotsman, do you really think if you're better than anybody else? I say, of course not, but they're lying. They do. We do. Ask the same question to a Jew, they are appalled, absolutely appalled and embarrassed at the question. People left the theatre just at asking the question. But everybody is allowed, just like in our own families. We tend to be a bit proud of our children and our grandchildren. Everybody's proud of who and where they come from, except Jewish people. Wonder why? And maybe the why is because for the last 2,000 years, we have been consistently and constantly told, whether we're living in Jewish areas of cities or walled Jewish areas of cities, ghettos, or whether we're being attacked in pogroms. And if you look at non-Jewish literature for the last 2,000 years, from the Merchant of Venice on, you'll find a consistent bombardment of the world telling us that you've got nothing to be proud of. And today, we're being told again and again, all the names, the dirty Jew, all the horrible nicknames are now becoming free currency once more. And when people say these things to you over and over again, it starts to impact on you. That's how you start to see yourself. It's important in these days, when people are trying to tell us that we're people who should not be proud of who and what they are, of our contribution. Not people who think we're better than anybody else, but people who have the right to believe we're as good as anybody else. Then it's important for us to reconnect, to re-examine, to examine perhaps for the first time who and what we are, what our history is, what our contribution to the world has been. Check out the number of Nobel Prize winners who are Jews. The wonderful, incredible discoveries that were brought to the world by Jews. Look at the philanthropy of Jews, and you will find there's so much to be proud of. No matter what the same voices who've tried to keep us in ghettos, physical walls, psychological walls, not understanding we should be proud of being Jewish. There's just so much to be proud of.